Barbara Marx Hubbard, a visionary, educator, a person who has been inspiring us for years, and I think this house is honored by your presence. And I believe that it is wonderful that you could find some time to come and join us and share your vision for a peaceful, a livable, a better world for all of us. And I believe that we will learn not only those of us who are listening to you, but also this house in general, which is mainly an intergovernmental process. But they need to have that vision, that inspiration that is essential for making any progress. And David mentioned about being human, and that is very closely related to what you are going to say, I believe.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Chaudhry. I am so delighted to be here in your excellencies, the mission of Bangladesh, the movement for the culture of peace. It is a great assembly, and sitting up there as I have been all morning and listening to you, it has made me aware, if people really knew how much is already working, how much is already growing, how powerful all the different nations who spoke were in their commitment to the culture of peace. I, as an American citizen who was not so closely involved in the UN, was literally overwhelmed with joy. And I just want to thank you all. Secondly, you have picked the perfect title for this discussion, How to Enhance the Synergy between the SDG goals and the 8 action programs of the culture of peace. That is a great question, because that's the question of nature itself. How do you take all these separate things and make a greater whole, which nature has been doing for billions of years? And first of all, I want to make an overall statement of what I think the relationship is between the SDG goals and the 8 action items of the culture of movement for the culture of peace. The culture of peace adds a dimension to the SDG goals of vision. Inherent in the culture of peace movement is a vision of a new world. The SDG goals are more or less key items as to how to get there, but it's hard when you take a series of crises and how to solve them to fully get the vision of what might be becoming from solving them. And I feel that the movement for the culture of peace provides us with something that the human species actually has never had. It's not like we all know what a peaceful world is and we're trying to get back to it. It's actually an emergent property that we are discovering how to do. So the reason for my talk would be to give a few insights as to the process to do exactly what you say. How do we enhance SDG basic goals with the actions for a culture of peace? And I'd like to just make one brief statement about how nature has been doing it for about 13.7 billion years. The story of nature is it goes from disorder to higher order, and has been doing so successfully in a totally mysterious way. But it has been identified by a Nobel Prize winner, Ilya Prigogine. He calls it dissipative structures. When a system becomes highly disordered, innovations and breakthroughs occur all throughout the system, and first they look ineffective. But at some point, as disorder increases, the innovations tend to converge toward connectivity. And there comes a moment in the evolution from a simple order to higher order when enough connectivity exists that the system cooperates in its own self-transcendence by connecting that which is working. And that the disorder and crises is essential for higher order to ever occur. So if you're an evolutionary student, you will have a phrase, crises is a driver for evolutionary breakthrough. Now we have the crises at an unprecedented scale, and we also have innovations at an unprecedented capability in the world today. So in order to enhance this synergy, I'd like to make a simple proposal of 3 or 4 things that I think we could do to enhance synergy of precisely this. The first proposal is to identify what's already working to solve any of the crises that are named in the SDG goals and any of the 8 action items that are working, and to start surveying the world for what works, not only for what's not working. As you well know, the news is what's breaking down. Well, that's only half the story. The other news is what's breaking through, and we have a very hard time in finding it. So I am suggesting, and I know it already is happening through the United Nations. I know there are major administrations looking for where problems are being solved. I'm suggesting that become a primary feature of our discovery. The second part, in order to enhance synergy between SDG goals and the culture of peace, would be a new way of convening people in a process whereby you have, I try to think of it as a whole system model rather than in silos and separate sections. So think of a wheel as a model. Here is all the SDG goals and the culture of peace goals according to what's already working anywhere in the world in one model on internet. And let's say then, when you have that existing and people convene in any culture, in any nation state, to try to solve any one of these problems or realize any one of these goals, what they would be able to do is base it on what people have already learned that works. Because if you're only faced with things that are very difficult to change, it's discouraging. But if you face the difficulty in the light of the breakthroughs that exist, and you have experts who know what's breaking through in some of these small groups that could be assembled through the United Nations, you would begin to have an empowerment of people, which I don't believe we usually get if we're only dealing with crises. It's the happiness. They get happy. Actually, what happens when you are gathered together and the people come in for the purpose of identifying what actions they wish to take in the light of projects that are already working toward these goals, and they also get communicated via internet, so anyone who makes anything work anywhere in the world becomes a star. And the continuing story of these kinds of small groups, wherever they may be, ends up telling a new story of humanity's greatness. A new story of hope with specific crises that need to be resolved in a spirit of hope. Because it's a huge difference to go at some of these very difficult items of problems that are so painful and destructive without the sense of direction. And I believe that what we would discover if we do this, that we would be discovering how nature has been doing it for billions of years. If you take that dissipative structure model, we have enough dysfunctionality certainly to get us moving. We have enough innovations certainly to get us rising. We are missing 2 things: connectivity of innovations and a process for people to connect their own creativity with positive innovation stimulated by crisis. This is so amazingly natural from an evolutionary point of view that I'd like to complete with a brief discussion that is written up in my paper, if you're interested, that I have been working for many years on creating something we've called an office for the future. An office for the future has the purpose of scanning for, connecting, and communicating what's working. And I'm proposing that if there were to be an Office for the Future movement in the United Nations, which it almost already is, the one step would be convening people everywhere to find out what's working and then to communicate what's working such that the offices for the future, wherever they may be, anywhere in the world, and several are being prototyped in Mexico, in the United States, and in other places already. So it doesn't have to be only through the UN, but the UN could be like a mother matrix. The UN could be gathering this information, and I have a vision of how the communication system within the United Nations, however that might be able to cover the stories of the emerging world, and the invitation for more and more people to join this United Nations movement. Because when I sat up there all morning, this is a great movement with great initiatives all over the place that are very humanly interesting. But because it looks bureaucratic, people are not totally aware of the human part of it. So I will just conclude by saying that I think that to enhance the synergy among the SDG goals and the 8 action items, that we should create offices for the future, whatever name we call them, and invite people from every nation state to join together to solve the problems in the light of social synergy, participation, co-creation, and a vision of a peaceful world that the human race is aiming toward and never fully had. By inspiration, by vision, I think we can add a dimension to the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our wholehearted thanks to you for coming and joining us and presenting those wonderful thoughts. And I believe that this thing that you shared with us, this sort of mindset that we need to think what is working and how to get energized by that. And I think this is a wonderful thing.
Would you like to have evolutionary eyes and see the whole story of creation in 1 minute? Well, here it is. You see that spiral and the wheel? It starts with the glow, with the origin of creation, the infinite, the mind of God, the universal intelligence. And you see coming out of that tremendous mystery a jump, energy, matter, life, animal life, human life. You see it going around every turn of the spiral. And here's what you discover when you look at it. Every turn of the spiral leads to more consciousness, more freedom, and more complex and loving synergistic order, as from single cell to animal to human to you and me now. And then look at the wheel. It's our turn on the spiral. I think it started in 1945 when the U.S. dropped the first bombs on Japan. Suddenly, we had powers of gods, but we were not good gods. That turn on the spiral we call the wheel of co-creation. If you look at it, you'll see right at the hub of the wheel, the core of the spiral is coming through our hearts. It's a new sacred space in evolution. And when you look at those sectors, which you'll describe later, every sector is some human endeavor. Health, education, economics, science and technology, and they're filled with projects that work in every field. And while systems are breaking down everywhere, they're also breaking through. The wheel of co-creation is going to help us connect that which is working and see the emerging world in our midst. And when we see it as the next turn on the spiral, and we realize that every one of us is part of that turn on the spiral, we get animated by our own vocation. We get what I call vocational arousal. We get excited to be part of the turn on the spiral. And when we enter into that wheel, we're going to find friends, colleagues, projects, people that are now working, turning the wheel toward what? The next stage of evolution, We could call it a co-creative culture, a universal humanity, Homo spiritualis. There is no full name for it because we are creating it now. The foundation for conscious evolution was formed by inspiration of the whole story of creation and how we can best participate in it. Please enter the wheel and find your place, and let's be part of reinventing the wheel. Thank you.